section recap. So this section was a bit more involved, a bit more technical, I would say, but nevertheless, it put the line under the A/B tests, and now we are sure and confident that what we're doing has statistical significance and backing behind it. So what did we learn in this section? In this section, we learned, number one, how to create and use bins. Bins are very powerful. They allow you to convert numeric variables into categorical variables. So instead of dealing with ages, which don't even have to be integers, which could be numbers with decimal points, now you're going to be dealing with categories. So is the person between 10 and 20, 20 and 30, or 30 and 40, or you could create larger categories like anybody under 25, then 25 to 50, 50 and above. It's all up to you. It's all in your hands what kind of bins you want to create. But basically, bins allow you to move from one type of variables to a different type of variables completely. Number two, how to visualize distributions. So here we saw how to use bins to visualize distributions. For instance, age and balance and any numeric variable. If you try to visualize your numeric variable in its raw form, you might come across the problem that you don't have enough counts in each value, because after all, it is a continuous variable. So that's where bins come in handy. They allow you to pack your observations into these separate segments, and therefore you can properly create a distribution, whether it's a normal distribution, a uniform distribution, or any other kind of distribution. The way to go about it is to create bins. Number three is how to create an A/B test for numeric variables. And this builds on from creating bins and converting numeric variables into categoricals. After you have done that, it's pretty simple and straightforward to build the A/B test. You just follow the framework that we discussed in the previous section of the course. Number four is how to combine two charts in Tableau. So this was a new technique that we learned in Tableau, combining two charts, one under the other, and at the same time working with the new marks pane and seeing the different tabs that appear there, and knowing that you can control each chart separately or you can control them together. So that's a bit of an intermediate technique, I would say, in Tableau, and definitely one that will benefit you whatever type of work you do in Tableau. It's always good to have two visuals on one chart because it allows you to save time. You don't have to switch the tabs all the time, and also gives more power to your visuals, allows you to drive more powerful insights. Number five, what the chi-square test is and how to use it. So in this course we had, or in this section of the course, we had an introduction to chi-squared, and I showed you exactly how I use the chi-squared to back my findings in Tableau. Up until now, our A/B tests were always kind of very visual, very powerful, very quick, but we weren't sure, can we rely on the results? But now we know how to check whether we can or cannot rely on the results. You use the chi-square test, and in particular, you can go ahead and use online tools that allow you to run it very quickly to check whether or not the difference that you're observing is statistically significant. And what that means is what you're observing in the sample, does it extrapolate onto your whole population or not? You can check that very quickly, and you will from then be confident in whatever you present to your manager, to your executives, to your board of directors, or to any audience you're talking to. It will give you that extra confidence in your findings. And six, chi-squared for over two categories. So chi-squared for just for a variable that only has two categories is pretty simple. It's very similar to an A/B test. But a chi-squared test for over two categories is still possible. There are online tools that will allow you to do that. But I also showed you my tip or hack on performing this test. You just select the two categories that you think there is a difference, and you just run a two-category chi-squared test. Because if there is a difference between two categories in a set of categories, then overall the difference will be statistically significant. And even logically, that is sufficient information for you to report. If on the other hand, if you have like 100 categories or 10 categories and only one of them is falling out of place, maybe you want to exclude that category overall and then report there is no difference. So that's kind of a different approach. But nevertheless, you have this method in your arsenal now, and you know how to go about a variable with lots of different categories, and you won't be put off by the fact that there's a lot of categories in your variable, and you don't have to run that huge chi-squared test. You can just check subsets of your categories. And finally, the bonus tutorials on chi-squared, they were more statistical, they were more in depth about chi-squared. So if you skip them, not a worry. The information that you learned in the rest of the tutorials is completely sufficient. If you did do those tutorials, it just gives you some extra information about the chi-squared and how exactly it works and how it's set up, and just gives you a few extra exercises that hopefully you were able to complete. So that's the end of this section. I really hope you enjoyed it and picked up a lot of valuable tips and hacks from here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, happy analyzing.